All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Amanda Pua Walsh, and I am the founder of Astrology Hub. And I'm here today with Tami Brunk, who is a shamanic astrologer, but also the founder of Astrology for Earth Renewal. And today we have decided to come together because there are some configurations in the sky that you should know about, but these configurations have really important messages for us. Most importantly, we're going to focus on Capricorn, but the element of Capricorn that isn't talked about as much, which is the feminine side of Capricorn, and how tuning into that feminine side or that feminine archetype of Capricorn can help us all through this time that we're in right now. So how it can nurture us, it can give us perspective on what's happening, and most importantly, how it can give us an idea or a vision into the future and what it is that we as humanity are being invited to dream into this reality. So Tami has so beautifully come here today to share her wisdom, her experience. We're also going to do a very special guided meditation. And Tami's going to tell you all about it, why this particular meditation on this particular day. So we're just going to jump right into it. Tami, thank you so much for being here. It is wonderful, as always, to have you here at Astrology Hub.
Amanda, I love being here with you, as you know. And yeah, what a potent moment to be here. And just to say that the feminine aspect of Capricorn, part of the reason we're talking about that is because right now, and this is going to be an interesting interjection, but Mars is actually activating Capricorn. That's one of the biggest things right now. Mars is activating the full stellium in Capricorn. For anyone who doesn't know what's happening in the sky right now, it's there is just a massive activation of Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter in Capricorn. And so now our conversation has to do with how do we work with this medicine? How do we work with this energy? And I'm a shamanic astrologer originally, so working with Daniel Giamario's system. And from that perspective, we look at Capricorn as a sign that carries feminine medicine. And when I say feminine, I'm not talking about gender. It's more about the spiritual orientation of that sign. Elemental, it's an earth sign. So the earth signs are feminine in that they're about bringing spirit into matter. They're about being fully embodied. And so with that, in traditional astrology, Capricorn is often seen as the patriarch or as the father figure. And so this is kind of a revisioning on that. And part of what's interesting about choosing to do this now when Mars is activating these points is that we want to honor the masculine principle of Mars, and also to honor that part of what the new expression of Mars, the Aries expression of Mars, is doing now is part of the reset. It's the reset of how it is that we see pretty much anything and everything in this moment where everything gets to, okay, we get to look at it new and fresh with fresh eyes. The masculine principle of Mars is actually supporting us in opening into what the feminine expression of Capricorn actually is. And so in shamanic astrology paradigm, I was so blown away when I was first introduced to this idea that when we serve, that historically, so every sign, every astrological sign has a core essence to it, right? But that each of these signs will be expressed in its content in a particular way based on the age or the era or the experiment humanity is on in period. So Capricorn, over the last 5,000 years, that has been some would say it's a time of great forgetting, where we've forgotten our connection to the earth. That this is a time where taken on that flavor of patriarchy in a sense, but that's not its original essence. That's this perspective, is that Capricorn in its original seed essence is actually feminine. And that actually, if you're going to be in service to Capricorn, which we're all kind of being asked to to be proactive, to move into the energy of Capricorn that benefits us as a whole and the planet as a whole. It's to be in service to the grandmother wisdom that lives inside of each of us, and the grandmother wisdom that is kind of ancestral knowledge. So there's this idea that there's this grandmother wisdom we can access with Capricorn, and there's way more to that. But does that, start with that kind of overview?
Yes. Well, I think we should go into that grandmother wisdom element. So when you say that, what do you actually mean?
Okay. So what I mean by that is, what I'm referring to are a couple things. One is to understand Capricorn has to do with the institutions, the rules, the culture. Capricorn is a culture creator sign. It has to do with how we as human beings create culture. When we've been creating culture from a more patriarchal lens, to do with having a profound separation from the earth. When we remember that Capricorn of culture, but it integrated the feminine as well as the masculine principle, then we can look for an example of what that grandmother wisdom is by looking at the Iroquois Confederacy, for example, and the fact that they had as part of their healthy culture the circle of the clan mothers at the top of their decision-making hierarchy. And so that's one way when we talk about grandmother, it's to imagine, what if I would even almost say it's clan mothers, it's grandmothers, it's like this elder feminine wisdom. What if the single mamas were the ones who were in charge of the planet? Think about that for a moment. Or what if the really wise women elders, or the wise male elders also, who have a concern for the planet and the next 7 generations, what if they were in charge? What if that part of each of us was in charge? So it's like that. When I say grandmother, I mean, it is, I say grandmother because it's elder wisdom, but it's integrating the feminine principle as well to balance out the masculine. So there is a certain kind of a nurturance and a certain kind of care. And again, it's not to go into the place of gender of male, female, because what I want to say about this is that think about grandmother energy as that part of each one of us who has a concern for doing everything we can in our daily lives in 3D reality, way that it benefits the earth in such a way that it really takes into consideration what the future is going to look like for all of us together. So it's very responsible, it's very practical, it's very capable, but it brings back into primarily and fundamentally a concern for the life systems of this earth. So when I say that, I should say also, it's the deeper grandmother that lives inside of each of us. It's not necessarily the cookie baking grandmother. It's like our feminist, because the South Node is still now approaching the very earliest degrees of Capricorn. And the way I've seen this is that the South Node it's almost like it's dipping us down like a shovel down through the layers of the soil of culture, down deep, 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 taking us to the origination point of what healthy culture may have looked like historically. Not that we want to go into the past, but that there are certain ways of being human. You know, that was a theme for this year, of stay human. Certain ways of being human that we may have forgotten, and that we can remember when we dip down to the deepest origination point of human culture. And so when I speak about grandmother wisdom, I'm talking about that earth-based, kind of more indigenous, feminine, as in concerned with matter, mother, here, 3D reality. That's what I'm referring to with the grandmother essence. Say that in working with this principle of the grandmother medicine or wisdom, or of that indigenous kind of earthkeep wisdom as the true essence of Capricorn, it's like this is what we're being asked to awaken to right now. I find it very to see the grandmothers as literally like a literal expression of our DNA, where our DNA holds the deepest wisdom from our ancestral past. And we focus a lot on epigenetics now, you know, like the way our genes carry trauma. But I think we need to have a word that describes the way our genes also carry strength, insight, the knowledge of how to work with big cycles of change like what we live in right now. And so it's like, think of your inner grandmothers. I like to embody them and personalize them. I feel like they're real. They're just as real to me as some other forces in the world. But they're our DNA, they're the seed, and they're also the seed potential of the future. So when I think of the grandmothers, I think of the way that in the Iroquois Confederacy, for example, and I think they're a great example for us right now, because our Constitution, here in the US, we're really, feel that we're really kind of in the front lines in terms of a lot of massive change, according to the astrology. And so it's useful to look back at our roots and understand that the Iroquois Confederacy was a group of tribal nations that had a really democratic, very egalitarian, very sophisticated governance structure that was hugely inspirational for Benjamin Franklin and other founders of the US. And so when the Constitution, they integrated some of the practices from the Iroquois. But the thing they didn't integrate was the circle of the clan mothers at the top of the decision-making hierarchy. Because these clan mothers, they could hire or fire the chiefs. They could choose whether or not we went to war. And they also were the ones, and this is where I'm going back to what lives inside of us. I see them as the ones who have the deepest connection to the wisdom from this. And they also are like those DNA who have the most profound visionary insight into the future. Because if you want to really think about it, what would it actually look and feel like to awaken the part of us that can even be farsighted enough to comprehend what 7 generations looks like in the future? I mean, that blows my mind. That's actually, which kind of jumps us further down the timeline this year. But so from my perspective, I've worked a lot with the grandmothers as an actual spiritual force who can be a source of guidance, of insight. You can think of it as tapping into your ancestral wisdom, your DNA encoding. So that's a bit around how we can work with that. And I'll tell you that for me, this is one of the most massive healing energies and medicines that I've found that we can work with when we're.
Well, and Tami's going to actually lead us or guide us through. We can call in and experience that healing and guiding energy of the grandmothers. So, and I wanted to ask the audience, so some of you are listening to this on the podcast, so you can't respond, but just respond in your head or out loud. But how many of you are feeling this activation? Like, are you feeling a renewed energy orgasm around living differently?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not there yet, it's totally okay. One of the things Tami and I were talking about before we came online is like the process of grief that people are going through. And I just want to read this a lot. There's no should about where you are right now. Where you are is perfect in your process. So don't feel like if you're like, no, I'm not activated, I want to be in fetal position all day crying. That's totally okay too. But I do know some of you are feeling that ignition. I know for me, one of the reasons why I left New York City 8 years ago, pregnant with my second daughter with no real plan, was to Hawaii and grow food and like learn how to do that. Here's this like Manhattan businesswoman having this desire to go back to the earth. Have I done it? No, not at all. I have dabbled, I've tried, but there hasn't been enough of a like compelling energy. In the last 5 days, have I gone and gotten soil and fertilizer and pots to start my little garden? Yes. So I think that I'm not alone in that. There's a lot of us going, oh wait, I forgot that's actually what I wanted to do. And in the busyness of life, I couldn't prioritize that, and also it's way easier to run down to Whole Foods or Safeway, all of a sudden that's not so easy. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, well, what if they run out? There's this, I keep thinking of the term righteous anger, because that is, and I feel like that's very grandmother, like enough.
Mhm.
And the enough that I'm feeling is enough within myself, like
Yes.
enough codependency
Mhm.
on corporations that don't care about you
Beautiful.
as a human being. They don't care about your children either. Enough. Take your power into your own hands as much as
Mhm.
possible. And this is a process that I think we're all at some point going through. And so I love this idea of tuning into this ancestral wisdom. Thank you for making the delineation too on what you mean
Mhm.
grandmother, not necessarily being age
Right,
related.
right.
Because when we think, oh, well, that only means
Mhm.
older women, it's like, well, no, there's an actual wise
Mhm.
woman inside of all
Yes.
of
Man or
you, man
woman?
or woman,
Man or woman? Yeah.
yeah, who have this
Yes.
energy. So,
Beautiful.
and then the only other thing I wanted to mention is I've sat in some women's circles where we actively call in grandmother
Yes,
lineage
literally.
by
Yes.
name, and there's
Powerful.
something so powerful. And I had to
Yes.
like text my mom and be like, "What's my great grand? Like, how far back do we even know their
Right.
names?" But calling in their names is really profound,
Absolutely.
and you can all feel this energy around
Mhm.
you. So I'm sure what you're going to lead us in
Yeah.
is maybe different than that, but there is a power there, and I've experienced
Mm.
it. So it's really exciting to share that with everybody as we go through this process in Capricorn. And for those of you, for people going, well, why this emphasis on Capricorn? In the
Mhm.
beginning, you said there's a stellium. A
Yes,
lot of
yes,
people
yes,
don't
right.
believe in stellium. Why Capricorn? Why now? Why tune into the messages of this part? Can you just like, can
Yeah,
you just
just
like
really
do it
quick.
for a layperson?
Yes, for layperson. So one of the things as astrologers, we have to look at what's happening with planets that are just really potent, powerful planets that we have to observe over time. And certain cycles happen, every couple of years, certain cycles happen, every 30 years or so. We've got a culmination of a number of cycles that are all happening at once that could only really happen not like 4,000 every 4,000 years. I mean, the number of planets that are coming together right now in a particular part of the sky in this sign of Capricorn, because the sign, the seasonal sign, has to do with where these planets are located in the sky. They're all lined up together. And this is something we have not seen in this configuration for at least 4,000, probably more years than that. And so that's pretty much all I'll say, is except that we know, we see as an astrologers that everything is lighting up what this whole Capricorn thing is about. Pluto, Jupiter, Athena, all these major players in the realm of astrology are all, and now Mars is activating all of them, kind of like lighting the fuse. And so then the conversation right now really is about what is Capricorn. And so this conversation right now we're having is another added octave or layer of the aspect of Capricorn that may have been forgotten. Because in traditional astrology, again, we often will say, well, it's the patriarch, or it's the father figure, it's the masculine in some way, the father. That's traditional astrology. It's not so much always, the conversation, feminine dimension. And when you said grandmother is not just an older person, it's to honor that there are many elders who carry this wisdom. And also, I've seen many young people who are like
Totally.
young elders. Greta Thunberg, I mean, she's a perfect example of that little grandmother. And when I first started working with this medicine and feeling it in myself and others, I remember Albuquerque, and I met these two men who were working, and they were so beautiful. They were creating this beautiful garden together. And I remember I sat down with them and I immediately was like, oh my God, they're the grandmothers. Like, it was so clear to me. So it's, hopefully I'm transmitting what I've experienced from that. That is not a gender thing, but once you start to feel them stirring inside of you, you really get it. They're like really there. And I do love that you did that exercise that you shared where you called your, all the women on your mother's line.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. I remember I did the same thing in a women's folklore class once, and I started collecting from my mother at the same time. But I remember too trying to call the stories, like call the names of my mom, her mom before. And isn't it interesting how quickly you don't
Yes.
know their names? You
I
don't
think
know
I could
them.
only go back to, well, grandmother, great grandmother. I don't think I could go beyond great grandmother.
Right. Yeah. And I would say that's probably typically true. And that also speaks to the need for, I think, many of us to consider in a time like this, where we're so slowed down, what were the experiences of our mothers and our grandmothers? When did they go through massive periods of change and transition? But it is also something energetic about getting that transmission and connecting to those who've come before. I think that's extremely powerful and potent. And it's part of this. And it's also bigger than that. I mean, I think, you know, from being dreamed a lot with these kind of grandmother figures at this point, I was telling you earlier that I had one point in my life that was really kind of chaotic. And I had gone to stay in a friend's cabin in the woods, and I just needed peace. Like, there was just so much chaos inside of me. And what a lot of people are really navigating right now. And I was just asking for a dream. I do a lot of dream work. And I was just asking for some resolutions and guidance in my dreams. And I had one very simple, clear dream. And in that dream, there were 3 grandmothers, and they just put their hands up like this. And there was this forcefulness about the way they put their hands up. And so anybody listening now, you can even do it. You can put your hands up like this. It's like, and what they said, be still. And when they said, be still, all 3 of them at the same time, I just felt it in my body. It was just like, stop. Because so much chaos, so much monkey mind, so much fear. And there was just that sensation, be still. And I think right now need that, just like it's that inner child in all of us that's feeling kind of scared and unsure, like the parents are not in charge and they should be, but they're not. Been for a long time. And so it's like that wiser, deeper part of us that knows what to do and that knows, sweetie, it's okay. Just stop. It's like the sensation of being held, you know, in many ways. And we have this wisdom that lives inside of us and vision.
Wow. Tami, one of the other things before we went on live was Venus and Inanna. So tell us how Venus and Inanna and Capricorn and all this can to help us tune into the messages of this time. And I just want to reiterate for those of you, especially who are newer to astrology, that there are messages from these placements. There's invitations, there's interpretations that give us clues about an outcome for anything that we're going through in our lives that's personal or collective, that is an evolution or is an upgrade. So when we tune into, I love that you use the word octave, because there's these octaves of vibration or energy within each of the signs, within the planets, and we get to choose which octave we tuned ourselves to. And so having translators of the language of light, which is what Tami is, enables us to, and when I say language of light, I'm meaning the literal translation of astrology, the language of light. So she's translating the messages or the octaves, and we get to tune into the octave that we want to manifest in our lives. So having knowledge and awareness of what the higher expression could be, what the higher vibration or higher energetic, higher electromagnetic field, you know, whichever term like lands for you, you get to attune your energy there. And then when you're there, you get to make your choices from there. You also can receive information from there. The same as octaves. So there's lower octaves or lower expressions, and if we're stuck there, we're only open to the messages or the consciousness of that. So that's why I'm so committed to continuing to have these dialogues, so you all get exposed to what it could be, and then as much as possible, for as long as possible, tune your antenna to that radio station and that broadcast and that frequency. And when we do that, really powerful things happen. And even if you can only do that for periods, it's extraordinarily powerful.
Absolutely.
Because those messages have an opportunity to come in to you. And so, okay, enough. Let's talk about Inanna and Venus. And why would we even be talking about that right this moment?
A couple of reasons. One, actually, Venus is right now, in a moment like now, in our moment today, we want to be looking for some of the points of ease that can kind of support us through a time that otherwise can feel pretty potent and intense. And Venus right now is in the sky that is like the Beltane point. So if you know anything about Beltane, Beltane it's 15 degrees Taurus. So that's just a place in the sky. Basically, so it's an activation point, and it's where the sun is going to be on Beltane. So Venus has already activated that point before the sun, and it's there right now, just within a degree. So we're feeling that. Yeah.
Most people don't know what Beltane is, and I degrees Taurus, but who cares? Like, why is that important?
Beltane is if for anyone who's heard about solstices or equinoxes, these are seasonal cycles where positions in the sky, so we have different amounts of light, and they're sacred timings across many earth-based cultures where ceremonies historically would happen, where we know the veil between the worlds is thinner. So there are times of magic and potency and possibility that our ancestors would actually have worked with very deliberately. We would have had a lot of festivals in those times. We would have, made magic. We would have had a lot of parties. It's a time of high magic and high energy. And Beltane is really is known for those who follow these things, one that really signifies the beauty of spring, like at its peak. So it's when all the flowers are blossoming, the birds are singing. It's a very sexy time. So Venus, you can imagine Venus is like the goddess herself, and she's already there. She's already poised, like right there in the Garden of Eden, like in this beautiful spring day. She's bringing us, she's reminding us that this actually is what the earth here is about for us, is this garden of earthly delights. And if we can take this moment to slow down and actually hear the birds and actually experience what it's like to be with our children. And sure, there's a lot of experiences we're having here, but she's helping us to remember what's beautiful about being on this earth, being in a body, because she's right there at that point in the sky that activates all of that for us.
You know, the irony of what you just said, as you were speaking about listening to I tuned into the birds outside.
Yeah.
But they were getting drowned out by an airplane.
That's ironic.
And I was like, wow, isn't that perfect? Because that's what's been happening for all of us. It sounds of nature, the beauty of nature, it's being eclipsed by all of these other things that we have going on here.
Right.
So anyways,
absolutely.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yeah.
So now what would be some messages from the Venus or the Venus story that we could tune into right now?
Sure. Okay. I've worked with the Venus cycle for many years. Is that Venus goes through a really profound cycle that the ancient culture, they actually told a story. It's one of the original, it's now become a very popular teaching story about their goddess, Inanna. It's a very potent story for our time. And like many mythologies, it's a story that helps us to understand what we're going through more deeply now. And the Sumerians would tell that story of Inanna's descent to the underworld. She went through a ceremonial death and rebirth, and then she came out. And they told this story as a literal description of the way the Venus cycle actually works. So the Venus cycle, Venus will go through over the period of about 18 months, a literal death and rebirth cycle. She goes descent into the underworld and then comes out and restores herself. And so after working with this cycle with groups of 80 to 100 women and men across the globe since 2014. That's a big part of what my work has been. If I've come to see that this Inanna story is really very potent for our time. So what happens in this story is that Inanna is this very, she's the goddess of heaven and earth. She's got her shit together. She knows who she is. She's the goddess of love, of war, of fertility, of agriculture. And she, at some point in the story, she her ear to the great below. It's like she's listening and she hears the call of the great below. She hears the call of the underworld in essence, and she hears the call of something deeper. You could say the voice of her soul, calling her to something deeper than what her current life and her current reality is calling for with her. And so that's the call to go to the underworld, literally. And so over the course of the story, and in this beginning point, she has to make the choice. First of all, when she goes to the underworld, she puts on all of her adornments. She puts on her crown, her beautiful gown. She puts on her lapis lazuli earrings, all these other adornments. And in the Sumerian language, the word for these adornments is meh. It's the meh or the me, meaning what makes her who she, it's all identity, it's all her ego, it's who, it's what she makes her feel real. So she has to prepare herself like that. But over the course of her journey into the underworld, she goes in through 7 gates and she removes a vestment. She is required to remove something at each gate: her crown, her earrings, finally her royal robes. So this is a story of deeper descent and what's required when we're going through a descent process, which is simply to say a transformational process where we're stripped down to our basic essence. And so Inanna and Venus actually have a lot to say about where we are right now. You know, Inanna, I love her because she actually chose to go to the underworld. You know, Persephone was kind of dragged down kicking and screaming. I have to tell you, Amanda, I think we're choosing this on some level. That might sound strange, but I think the invocations we do where we say we want to halt climate change, where we say we want to create a better world for the future, where we want to live life more in harmony with the earth and with more joy, I think we're calling, this is going to sound really strange, I think in some way we're choosing a descent collectively. The deeper part of our soul is choosing something collectively because it's needed, because what we have now and what we're experiencing is not nearly as want to experience. And that's part of the lesson of Inanna, is we have to strip ourselves down to the very, to what's essential in us, so we can have the deeper transformation and come into the truth of who we really are.
You know, Tami, as you were speaking about the choice, even those who may not have consciously been invoking a new reality, even the cry, even the tears, even the crying out, even the depression, even the anxiety that people have been feeling because of the lifestyle that we live, the fast pace, the pressure, the constant have to do. They may not have been consciously calling that in, but their tears are the tears of their soul saying, like, I can't do this anymore, enough. And, you know, it's interesting, just to lighten it up a little bit for a moment, not that we need to, not because we went anywhere wrong, because it's true, and it is the profound place that we're at. And transformation is the process of transformation, that stripping away of who we think we're to become who we actually are. And that process is humbling. It can be very painful. It's very vulnerable. And that's what people are experiencing. It's scary. It's uncertain. You don't know what's happening. And that it's part of the process, and that it kind of for something very new to come forth. One of the things we were talking about before is there's like a meme going around saying like 6 weeks we'll know every woman's like real hair color. Or I was telling Jamie that there's this hair stuff I love to put on my hair that makes my hair less frizzy, but the store where I get it was out of it and now they can't open anymore. I was like, well, you guys are gonna see the real
Amanda.
it's
Yeah.
big. Yeah. So I mean, that's part of though the
Yeah.
disrobing that we're all doing. And I what happens in that process though is what we really value comes through so clear. What is it that you really, really value at the deepest level of your soul when all of the things that we thought we valued are no longer available, are no longer accessible, so I hear a message of it from Inanna, and that that delineation that you made about her choice, that is a empowering perspective shift that I think could help a lot of people if they can tap into that, versus Persephone, the victim, getting drawn.
Right.
Well, we could see it that way. This is on us.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it is.
Yeah.
It's not like everyone went, oh, let's have a coronavirus.
Right.
And
No, not at all. Of course not.
Yeah. So it feels like this external thing happening to us. And yet, from the level of the soul, if we can see that perhaps our collective soul, perhaps our individual souls are saying, this is what we need. Like, this is the time. And this is going to result is more true for you and for everybody. Maybe it's not going to, I don't feel like the soul's ever saying it's going to be easy.
Right.
Like, you're not going to hurt.
Right.
That hasn't been my experience. Like, I remember, in all the experiences in my life, which have shown up as crisis, I would get angry at the people that would say, jump and the net will appear, or follow your bliss and doors will open, because I did that and it didn't feel like that. It was like, no, I feel splattered on the ground. No net came. Right. Or every door feels closed to me. I don't feel that. But it's time. I think that's the element that has to be brought into the equation, because doors to open, in order for it to feel like you're like, lifted up again, there is an element of time in a process of transformation and the chemical process that has to happen in order for the real juice of that transformation to really take place. So I remember this one person saying to me when I was in some depths of despair, literally crying every single day for a year, as my life was breaking down. Lonely right now, you feel grief right now, feel it to the core. Feel it as deeply and as profoundly as you can, because when you do that, you get to experience the gifts of that. We experience things emotionally on the equal and opposite spectrum, right? In order to feel joy and bliss, we need to feel that despair, and just so that was empowering too, because that was like, there was purpose behind my grief, there was purpose behind my despair. It was like, all right, I'm just gonna feel it as much as I can. I'm gonna like it's like suck the marrow out of it. And then there's that Inanna's ascent, where she gets back, and I'm sure she emerges more glorious than ever.
Alive. She emerges alive, fully in her aliveness and renewed in who she truly is. And I just love what you're saying about it's an alchemical principle of abetting, making something bigger. Let it be, like, lean into it. I think it's so essential. We were talking earlier about how the lungs, which is where this virus hits. The lungs are the place where we process grief or don't process grief. And I know I have a dear friend who says, cry every morning. It's really healthy for you. Just let yourself cry. And I think as we have the South Node in Cancer continuing North Node continuing a little bit longer in the sign of Cancer also, it helps us with that. And Pisces, Mercury, you know, there's still astrological aspects that help us feel things, and Pluto. I think that's a really big thing for us now. When we do be still, we feel what we feel, and we hold each other through that feeling in whatever, because we've been a very dissociative culture. And so part of what we're wanting to do is drop down into our bodies and our feeling, and that is where experience is gonna take us, I think, in the best possible scenario, because it's painful to be in a body, be a human being sometimes, but it's so much better than life lived superficially, which is what's so easy to do, crying, I think.
What an invitation.
Yeah.
What an invitation. And, you know, I keep thinking about this word hope. And there's a superficial application of it, and from my perspective, and then there's a profound application of it. Because hoping that this will be over soon and life will just go back to normal, to me, is where our hope or our prayers or our intention will be the most useful. Is I hope that we learn what we need to learn from this experience.
Absolutely.
That we do suck the marrow out of the depth of this experience, so that we can learn what we need to learn and change the way we need to change. So it's not about hoping like, oh, I just hope this will be over, because that's that disassociation that you're talking about. And that will rob us. That will rob us of the opportunity. So in order for us to really embrace what is in front of us, we're gonna have to feel it. I love, you know, I used to listen to Michael Beckwith from Agape a lot, especially when I was in my I call it like my personal apocalypse, or like my personal fall of Rome, because that's what it was. But he would say, you have to feel it to heal it.
Right.
You have to feel it to heal it. So if we want to heal certain things in our lives, if we want to heal certain things as a collective, for the planet, for whatever, we have to feel it first.
Right.
Or else we won't change.
We won't.
It's just the way we are. I don't know why, but we just don't seem to change that.
Right.
So
right. And those feelings can be the full range, you know, and I think for so many people to be how it's going to be, it can be all the feelings we think of as being bad are the ones I see so much that it's like, we're going to have to figure out ways to just be with it. And that's maybe anger, maybe, you know, like rage, grief, sorrow around, you know, maybe seeing where we're not as close to this person who's now in our house all the time, or, you know, for grief for not having the opportunity now to be with someone far away who we wish we could have been with more. You know, there's those personal human griefs. And then I think what's so strange about this, we were talking about this earlier, Amanda, it's like, is it possible that this scenario, as difficult and painful as it is it possible that it's the one thing, again, if we were to have collectively chosen something, as difficult as it is, that helps us to do what we need to do around climate change? You know, the collective grief that we've all had, and especially our young people, but anyone who's paying attention around the lungs of our planet, what was happening with those forest fires, what was happening in the Amazon, this collective grief, everyone feels that. Everyone feels it, whether they say they're, you know, they love the earth or what, everyone, I think, senses and feels what we've been doing to our planet and has grief on some level around how it's out of balance. And I think that larger grief, you know, as within, so without, what's happening, we are earth, I'm earth, you're earth. So that if we can process the, then I think that's also the healing for the earth.
And I think a lot of people have felt immobilized
Yeah, I think you're
around the
right.
grief that they feel for the earth. I know I have. It's like
Yeah.
I see it. It makes me
Yeah.
sad. I know I'm contributing to it,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
the
know
hardest
how to
part.
fix it. And I think what's really interesting is that we've gotten to see and experience the mobilization of humanity across the globe. And so that is a force that we could use for positive change.
Absolutely.
We've seen it happen now. And so, there's a lot of people right now that have a lot of systems and ideas and
Yes.
things in their whole
Yes.
life. It's now there's space for those things to come through,
Mhm.
solutions to a lot of our current challenges.
Yeah,
And it is my hope, and I'm sure many people out there, that those voices can now be
absolutely.
heard. And maybe it is quiet enough for us to start paying attention.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Tami, let's move into the meditation that you
Okay.
have
All
prepared
right.
for everybody. Tell us why you wanted to do this and how you think it can help everyone. Um, and even people that don't normally
Mhm.
meditate. Like, is this something that can help them too?
Yeah,
So let's just,
absolutely. So this
go there
meditation
now.
is one that I created a little while ago, but I find it to be something that I return to again and again for myself. And it just came to me. And what it is it's you meeting your grandmother guide. And I say guide because this could be any one of it could be you contact your ancestral wisdom, but it's through embodied form, right? So this is you connecting with a source of great wisdom and strength. And it came to me through a, a vision live. And again, I've gone to it again and again and again, and it supported me. So I think it might support people right now in a time where we need a lot of like deep rooted sources of strength. So that's why.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I'm just going to invite everyone who's listening to take a moment then to just ground and maybe put your feet on the floor, feel of your feet on the floor, and feel your sit bones if you're seated or wherever you're in contact with the earth. And then let yourself also just soften into your breath. And now to just open your inner eye and to see that you are lying in a field of grasses and of flowers. And the air is the perfect temperature. You might hear bee buzzing. You might see butterflies. And the sun is shining, but it's not too hot. And now you look up and you see a great bird flying towards you. Maybe it's an owl, maybe it's an eagle. It's one of the great birds of wisdom. And this bird approaches you and it lands near you, and it's large enough that you now embark upon this great bird, and it takes you through the skies. And as you look down, you can see, and you can look down over the earth, and you see great forests, you see the great beautiful plains, you see great rivers and watersheds, you see all manner of ecosystems and landscapes as you sweep across this beautiful, radiant, vibrant earth. Until this great bird takes you to a beautiful little valley. And as you are dropped now, as you're gently dropped onto the earth, you look up and you see to your left, you're in a canyon, and you look up to your left and you see these beautiful red stones. It's a big cliff of red stones, and they look like faces. They look like bodies of beings, of humans, and it's red rock. And when you look closely at them now you see that they're to move, and that they're actually the bodies of women. They're the bodies of grandmothers and the faces of grandmothers up in these red rock cliffs, these red rock bluffs. And so you see those grandmothers up to your left, and you observe. And now you look before you, directly of you, and you see that there's a beautiful stream and there are cottonwood trees, beautiful trees all along the stream. And these beautiful trees are, their leaves are just shaking in the wind, and these trees feel very, and as you look at these beautiful trees, you see that these trees also are actually the bodies of women, that these also are grandmothers splashing in the water. And now you look to your right and you see that there is a cave. And as you look into that cave, you can see the flicker of flames. And you look more closely and you look inside that cave and you see that there's a fire within the cave, and around it is a circle of women. And you instinctively again know that this is a circle of grandmothers. And now you stand at the crossroads. And as you stand at this crossroads and you see grandmothers to your left, grandmothers before you, and grandmothers to your right, I want you to take a moment. You might put your hand on your belly. You might put your other hand on your heart. And I want you to consider what in your life right now is something that is burdening you, something that feels heavy to you, something that is so heavy for you to carry and you would really like support. And as you consider what that thing is, what that situation, maybe it's a dynamic with a loved one, maybe it's something about you said that you wish you wouldn't have, it could be anything that you're concerned with, something about your current life. Whatever this situation is, let it rise up to the surface, this concern, this burden, and let it take the form of something. It can be any kind of object. It might just be, it might be that it just is like a ball of a color and a texture, but let it become some kind of an object that you have in your hands. And now as you carry this, it might even be just a package that's like your burden. It might be even, and you might even see it literally as baggage or luggage that's very heavy that you have to carry. So now I want you to just, for a moment, bring your attention back to these three choices, these three grandmother presences that are all there present waiting for you. And I want you to sense, feel, and know in your body. And you might even feel a little sensation to the left or the right or straight ahead. And you choose now which circle of grandmothers are for you to meet with. And so now you approach these circle of grandmothers. And as you do, there's one grandmother who separates herself from the group. And she sees you and she recognizes you. And this is the look on her face, is of such love and of such delight to see you. And you may also see in her face and in her eyes an expression of great compassion, an understanding of what it is that you are carrying. And as she approaches, she sees your burden. And I want you just to take a, she speaks with you. She might offer you a hug. She might offer you some words of advice. She might offer in some way to support you in taking this burden and doing something with it that would be appropriate. So let her be with you now and let her support you in this. Now, in your visit with your grandmother, take a few moments more. You're going to feel into you've got a pocket. You're going to feel into your pocket and an offering of some sort. You might have flowers that surprises you. You might have some kind of something of beauty, a beautiful stone, some kind of sacred herb. I want you to offer this in gratitude to your grandmother. And as you look into your grandmother's eyes, know that she carries the wisdom, the ancestral wisdom of all those women and men in your ancestral line, all of the courage, all of the strength, and that she's been waiting for you this whole time to come to her, to ask you for your help. And so give to her now this gift in thanksgiving for her presence, and know that she is always here, and know that there are other grandmothers who are always here to support you, to guide you, connect you to forces of unshakable strength. And now as you say goodbye, you may embrace her, you may hold each other's hands, just take a moment to say goodbye. And once you're complete, you may turn around and see yourself in your present room, in your present location, and bring yourself fully down in present moment, knowing that the wisdom of the grandmother is with you always, always as a source of support and guidance and wisdom, as a greater form of intelligence living in you, and as a support for times of change. So it is, blessed be.
Wow. That was a gift. Tami, so much.
You're so welcome.
I'd love to hear from the audience how that was. That was would love to hear from all of you if you want to share about your experience there. Can I share real quick?
Absolutely, of course.
So my mom's mom, she's Irish, not Hawaiian at all, but she loved to call her tutu, which is the Hawaiian name for grandmother. I had no idea that every Hawaiian grandmother is named Tutu. So when I moved to the Big Island first, before Maui, I would hear people say Tutu. I was at this one park and this girl said, "Oh," I went, "Oh, that's my grandmother's name too." And then I found out that that's all grandmothers' names in Hawaii, and she was just there, Hawaiian elder tutu. I was able to pull out this gorgeous lei for her, my lei, which is such an honor. It was like coming home, and she's always been there. And that felt so profound that you just enabled that reconnection, that gift of remembering. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad. I think that it's so important for us to connect to this lineage now.
Jamie, Nora Evelyn says, "Thank you so much. Moved me to tears." Kathy Koenig says, "Lovely, brought tears, felt understood by her and also by my." Irvine, "Thank you, also brought me to tears." Wow, tears we were talking about earlier.
Right. So good. I'm so glad.
Felt the love and strength of one grandmother who had been through so much in her life. I gave her a rose quartz. And Hildy says, this visualization is so powerful for me. Emotions come. Thanks, Tami and Amanda. Kathy gave hers a ruby. Leah said, met my Nana really strongly, but then also the grandmother from my mom's side and great grandmothers arrived. They all had a strong sense of playfulness, joy, music, and Venus, Taurus, honey. Here's also, when I returned to room, I felt shivers. I had my grandma here. She's been around me before. That was
awesome.
to share, everybody, please.
Yeah,
it's so
thank you.
wonderful. You know, when Tami says maybe we should cry every morning, maybe just reconnecting with our grandmother wisdom will enable those healing tears to come through.
Yeah.
What a gift. That's all I have to say. What a gift. Thank you. You know, everybody, Tami reached out to me and said, I have a meditation I want to share. I have something I want to share. And I can really understand now, Tami, why you felt so compelled to share that right now in this really, really moment. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Always such a deep pleasure.
Yes, it is. And thanks to all of you for being here, for opening up your hearts, for hearing the message, both that Tami had to transmit for all of us today, but also the message of your grandmothers and our grandmothers. And may we be carriers of their voice and their message and their wisdom and their medicine for this time. Please continue to write to us in the chat. Interested in following us in different platforms, you can watch our videos now on YouTube. We're turning most of these live broadcasts into articles that you can read on Medium and very soon on our website, new website coming soon to house all of this amazing content. You can join our free Facebook group, the Astrology Hub Global Forecast Community. It's a free group. You can follow us on Instagram things daily. We make these videos into Instagram TV, but it's our intention to be here holding your hands through this process, reminding you of who you are, reminding you that it's okay, it's part of the process that we're going through, and reminding you of the messages of the universe, of the planets, of the grandmothers as well. Add that to the list. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and please stay tuned. More to come. Aloha.